So I heard one phrase from teachers. They say, good teacher, good lesson is not about your subject, but about the students. And you don't have to feel like students yourself, but everything I'm going to say is going to be about you, because I don't want to be a lecturer who is kind of telling people. And I was born in St. Petersburg, and we always listen to speakers with this feeling of guilt. Yes, please tell us, dear speaker. So I'd like to have a light interactive discussion. Nevertheless, I understand that during this time when I'm here for 2 days, and about 36 times people ask me, why, Sasha, you did this, why you traveled around schools, what was the reason? And I will explain you. I'm going to rewind back a little bit so that we could use the same language, so that you could understand my state of mind. Did you have in the past the feeling where everything you do at work, by and large, is not needed to anyone? I'm going to raise my hand as well, because I was exactly like that. I was 25 and I had the feeling that everything I'm doing. Now I'm 33, so at 25 I had the feeling like I already tried everything. For 4 years I was a TV correspondent. I was an editor in a business magazine. I had good interviews, everything was good. Then I was reporting about cars. I was taking pictures of cars. I was reporting about cars from beautiful countries, but somehow I felt frustration. And I will explain you why. It's important in the context of the school. So I felt frustration because I did not feel practical sense of my work. Because my friend and I are always discussing this topic, and we say the profession of a journalist is useless. What do they do? If you have a surgeon, like you cured somebody, and you stitched somebody, and you saved his life, there are teachers, and please, by show of hands, show us who are the teachers here. So you don't have a question about your sense of your work. But what about journalists? They say Watergate, some important investigations, everything is so significant, but really I did not feel that about my work. So I guess I need to speak quieter. Okay, so in reality I felt like my work is a way of exchanging my time for good perks and travel. So I'm trying to improve someone's brand visibility and recognition. So the company's paying, and this is really for mutual benefit. But as a result, I had the crisis in my profession and frustration because I had no idea why I'm doing this, what I'm doing. And then at the same time, I started meeting people who I call unique people, and this is really an overly used word, but this is someone who walked around Earth to get rid of depression. A lone American comic who was so lonely, who put up a sign, a paper sign with phone numbers. If anybody wants to talk about anything, please call me. I am a lonely guy named Jeff. Then someone took a picture of this, then they put it on Facebook, and 150,000 persons call him over 3 months. So I met these people over these years, and these people explained me and told me about the sense behind my work. And then I realized that I have to move on. And now I can tell you that among my characters, there were a lot of teachers, and it was an eye-opening experience. I switched 3 schools, and in neither of those schools I've had the feeling like I'm getting what they promised on the first day of schooling. And we keep asking ourselves the same question, why we went to school. And I'm trying to compare this with this acne among teenagers. It will go away at some point. So I thought that I'm like everybody else, but at 26 I started talking to my mom. We started talking at a very late age, and she says there is this commune in St. Petersburg who are against your typical school program, school curriculum, and those were wonderful teachers agreed between each other that they will teach something beyond your school curriculum. And I will give you a specific example. They would write essays like Hear the Whisper of the Roofs. And they were reading Pasternak and Tsvetaeva, books which were not in the curriculum. She would speak about the influence of art and music on the lives of kids, and something which really changed my mind. There was this homework to walk through different cities and help people you meet. And those were very, very interesting things. And I thought, why some people have these wonderful teachers who we love and remember for decades, like my mom, and then there is me, and I don't remember none of my teachers. Well, I remember only one who was hitting me in the head with a logbook. So I don't know how that happened, and I kept asking that question. And then there was another thought that I had in my head, and I discussed it with Dima Zizek, because now he is mentioned by anyone for these 2 days. Everybody calls him, and we kept discussing this. How does this happen? And we are all born equal. We are all born equal. We were born equal at the same time. We were all curious. We wanted to stick a finger anywhere. We wanted to lick dirt and whatnot. Then we go to school, and happens what? Dima mentioned this already, right? Please help. They taught my son to hate everything he used to love. Nothing is interesting for him anymore, except for his phone. And I wanted to find schools where I could understand what's the secret behind this. How can an outsider understand what's the secret behind this people and why they do it this way for many years? And there was this one important question which I kept asking myself, and this is not really a new question. Why do we need school at all? And this is true. I kept talking to teenagers for these 2 years. I met hundreds of them, and many of them had no idea why they visit school, because, again, they were justifully saying that those things that they explained throughout hours, they could Google in minutes at home. And I had this objective, and it's so good that I had a project helping me to implement it. So I visited 400 schools in different countries. I met hundreds of teachers. And what can I tell you now? Briefly, but it's going to be superficial anyway. So I kind of developed 4 rules of an ideal school, quote unquote, of course, because you can understand yourself that there is no ideal school whatsoever. But I will try some things to show you. This is my favorite definition of education. Education happens when the fact meets emotion. This is this has been said by someone very smart. This is when the fact meets emotion. This means education. And usually these rules don't probably sound exactly like this, but rule number 1, you don't need teachers, you need burning people. So Maupassant used to say that nothing lights up better than other person's passion. Another teacher from Moscow said something which is more close to life. How come this happens? Okay, so we give this bike to the kid and he's gonna ride all day long, but you bring him to a PT class and he's gonna get tired in an hour. So interest is a fundamental thing which we keep forgetting every time. It all narrows down to interest, and I'm going to tell you what I mean. In one of the small Danish schools in Jutlandia in the north, it's just a regular school with wonderful teachers. The director told me one interesting phrase: there is a direct link between the level of boredom and how much he or she knows. In Denmark, it was a surprise for me. In Denmark, kids fill out forms every year, and it's important to understand how boring for them is to study. And they realize the older they get, the more boring it is for them to study. Hence, and I like Denmark very much, and I will always mention it because this is the country where any phrase, any answer starts from by law, we have to make school interesting. This is what I heard. So by law, every school is supposed to create a curriculum and do something, in any case, to make their school interesting. So what did they do in this specific school? This is really a bad dream of a Russian teacher. hands on the legs on the table. So they started uniting and bringing together students that share the same interest. In my case, it was the A students, the B students, and then the C and D students who will end up as blue-collar workers. So this is what they did. They decided to unite students around a certain interest, something unusual. And there was this example which I saw. Denmark is a good country, is a well-to-do country, but they still have bullying. So imagine this, 12-year-old boy, and he wants to learn to play violin. And there are 800 students, and he is the only one like this, and he's bullied. So, everybody is into girls, but he's into violin, so not good. And he ends up in the classroom where he has 28 kids like him. And then we have this interest, then we have curiosity, and then there is the desire to learn, and it's threefold now. And I saw how they were talking to each other. This is really unbelievable level of acceptance. This program is very popular. And now people travel 50 kilometers. And in Denmark, it's like me taking somebody from Moscow to Finland to study. It's a long way. And I'm going to show you another example. I will try to tell you the name of the school, and I tried for 2 weeks to properly call it. That's the name, Kunskapsskolen. That's the name of the school. It's the School of Knowledge. That's the translation. And I'm gonna tell you all these examples, and these are not just miracles. These are not just some famous examples. These are the things that can apply for every country just by doing something with regular people. Kunskapsskolen. This is the school where they decided that the time of regular teaching has passed. Now every teacher in New Age has to become a coach. And I know that people start receiving tics because of this overly used word. But you have 800 kids. Every teacher takes about 40, and he is working with them from day one until they graduate. They know where they're gonna go after school. Like this boy wants to be a lawyer, and he needs to pass math test, and he hates it, like me, and I'm very happy to identify with him. So he says, you have a choice now. That's the teacher says. You can learn math at home, you can learn math at school, but let's just have 2 hours of your math per week. You hate it, but then and then you pass your math, but then we add 5 hours of Spanish. And then you will understand why you do this, why it's important. You will still keep your curiosity at the same level. You will have interest in your training, in your schooling. And what's important, in Sweden, same as in Russia, same as in many other countries, every school also has to follow a general government curriculum, and you are configuring this general curriculum according to every student. So you have this many students, but they kind of follow their own agenda. And this is one of the really good examples which I love. Then there is another example. Not everybody signed up to all people who I sign up to. But they probably will agree that there is this huge problem with teaching literature. There's a huge problem. It's so big that one of the professors in Moscow University developed a viral post. He says that literature class should be abolished completely because nobody understands what they read. The best essays are not written based on Dostoevsky, but they write about the Game of Thrones or the Avatar. So, and this is her idea. Maybe we should just use this as an optional class. There is the new school in Moscow, and there are some star teachers, and I was trying to understand why they are so starry. And Sergei Volkov is one of those teachers, and I kept asking him, what makes teacher good? And he says, it's everybody who can make things that it's about you. And I saw how it's happening. So he's speaking about this wonderful example of war and peace. They discuss it. They say Kutuzov was supposed to send 4,000 men to fight the war, and what kind of decision he's supposed to make. So 4,000 men. Imagine this number. Do you understand how many is that? And let's have a look. Let's just look outside. This is the playground, and just make a count, and let's see how many people will fit into this playground. And then there is another example from War and Peace, and I like it very much because, again, this is what differs good teacher, quote unquote. There's this Anastasia who is a literature teacher, and she says you have to catch him warm in the very beginning, because if you fail, it's going to be not good. So head teacher of literature would come to a classroom and yell, Tsvetava was a lesbian, and then everybody would sit with eyes open, and she's gonna put information into their heads while they're still warm. So I think she used to say that War and Peace is very boring and we don't need to learn it. We have to just completely strike it away from the curriculum. And people sit and like, what? And then after a couple of minutes, people say, no, it's not true. And then there is a dialogue. And then they start proving the teacher that actually you have to learn War and Peace, that it's important. And then there is another important example, and I'm going to use this from literature. And I learned about it just by chance. I found the name of the teacher, and then I met the teacher. So they were teaching biography of Lermontov. It was a lot of text, a lot of facts, not interesting. And she somehow wanted to make it closer to the 5th graders. She analyzed all the literature that they like in grade 5, and they read Harry Potter at this age. And she started looking at Harry Potter, something that was cross-cutting. And of course, this is the inability to express yourself, difficulty talking with parents, half-bloods, pure-bloods. Then she read Lermontov's biography, and then she said, Lermontov is Harry Potter. And I'll explain why. And it was a very successful idea. Now you're thinking about how to make things closer to their understanding. I'm a journalist. I understand how this works. Yeah, Vladimir Yakovlev and I, we organized Kommersant publication and Snob, and we were trying to understand how text is working, how the attention is working, how to make sure that your text reaches millions of readers. And I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think that that's what teachers should be doing. They should find the packaging, because it's very easy to scold children and say they do nothing, but it's very easy. If you want your kid to stop eating potato chips and eat porridge, you make it nice for him.
That's briefly it. Let's move on. The second rule, Apelsin School. I'm not sure whether Dima told you how the physics are being taught there since grade 1. The only school I'm aware of when they do this. I was surprised at myself and I asked him, how come? He said, a teacher, young guy Sasha, came to us and he said, hey guys, there are certain gadgets back at home that you have nowhere how they work, but you would love to learn how they work. So next week, bring the list of those gadgets. Microwave, tap, computer. He put it down. Here's your curriculum. In a month's time, kids would know the basic laws of physics. And as one of the teachers told me in Denmark, the school's job is not to prevent kids from learning. The second law, not knowledge but skills. We all recognize that we lack skills, and today I made this quote already, but it's close to me. I was born with the Soviet heritage of you choose your profession like your wife once for the whole life. And when you read those simple 3 words, and every new school I would come to, they also claim that you need to learn and study skills, not knowledge. And the list of those skills repeat themselves, which means they are needed. These are the paintings in the ancient caves. The principal of the Finnish school, Resu, painted to me how the education process works. That's the level of painting skills of Finnish teachers. And she explained to me how come they introduced an experimental curriculum in Finnish schools. Not to deliver separate topic classes, but the whole topic. The first spot here is what you heard about, some phenomenon like Baltic Sea. The second point, you heard it from your friends. First connection there. Then you heard the same thing from your teacher. The third nod here, and the job of the teacher is to connect all those nods. That's the job of the teacher. That's why in Finland, Denmark, other countries, the focus was on skills, and I'll tell you which. One of the very first ones, the banal one, is the ability to adapt to something new. The world is changing. That's the skill to adapt to something new. I heard this over and over again. The second skill is the ability to work as part of the team. And this brings us to the initial idea that school will prepare you for grown-up life. Because teamwork is something that will help you to recognize how to work with multiple new people. Understanding new cultures. In Finland, you can come across a case when a blonde-haired boy together with a girl in hijab cook, and through cooking other cultures' meals, you recognize how to live with them, and the ability to live in the digital world. Well, all of the first graders know what the digital world is about. No, kids think they know that they already know how to live in a digital world. So when high school kids ask, what is this and what is that? And she would say, Google it. Why? I asked her, because they need to learn how to Google first. Another confirmation of this, an example from one French lyceum where every morning the teacher brings 6 fresh newspapers with the same event presented in 6 different fashions and different angles. What is fake news and what's not? And again, this is a skill that we need to give to kids. And I came up with this phrase, which I like and which is true. It's more difficult to defend yourself from information than to get it. Another skill is to learn how to make mistakes. Probably Pata mentioned it, but Shalva said that the red ink pen should be cancelled in schools. What I liked in Denmark, they said 20 years ago, you would get the homework in red ink. All the mistakes and errors identified in red ink. So what does Denmark do now? They show you where you can improve your work to get a different, improved result. 2 favorite stories about mistakes. One done by the math teacher who said that if you divide 27 if you take the root out of 27, it equals 5. And all of a sudden, a boy said, no, it's 7 point something. And he says, addressing the teacher, I got the wrong number. And he said, that's bad, because that's the correct one. He says, oh, my mistake. And he recalculates and still gets the different number. And he says, Thomas, come on. This is the correct answer. And then a girl said, let me double check you. He says, are you walking a thin ice? Are you doubting me, your teacher? And Barbara says, well, it's okay, I can balance on a thin ice. She does the calculation, and it's also 7 point something. He says again, are you arguing with me? Then the third and the fourth join this wave of indignation, and on the fifth pupil he said, a teacher is not God, he might make mistakes, think with your own head. I love this example. There's another case when you include kids and work on the mistakes. When a language teacher explained what is the noun, the verb, etc. And the teacher said, let's play a game. I give you the name and you, with gestures, give me the answer. Like, this is the noun. He says, great. If it's a verb, we'll stomp our feet. And if it's an adjective, we'll roll our hands. And he said, smile. They wave hands. To smile, stomp feet. Smiling, roll their hands. So that was inclusion. And at the end, 14 were waving hands while 2 were stomping with their feet. So I was thinking to myself, what would she do about this exercise? And she said, thanks separately to those who made mistakes, otherwise we wouldn't recognize what was correct. And it's very much connected to the self-esteem story I mentioned this morning. One of the most interesting questions why the school is needed is to gain the skill of self-assessment. Not learning how to read or write, but how to assess oneself. Once I lived in the family of Russian immigrants who go to the ordinary Danish school, and the girl was bullied by not only peers but teachers. She's dyslexic, she reads poorly, and she was bullied. Partial success in the story that the teacher was sacked, and then she went to another school, and in 2 weeks' time she reads and writes quite well, and she wanted to identify what was the miraculous approach that she applied. She said, I did nothing, I just helped with increasing self-esteem. Another personal story about the mistakes of the dean of the School of Journalism 30 years back. Young Leonid Parfenov at the first grade raised his hands, and the dean complained about the story after the 5th glass of wine, when he could speak up his mind. And it's directly related to mistakes. When Leonid Parfenov corrected him about the date, it was first grade, but 200 pairs of eyes looked at him and said, no, you were wrong, Leonid. And he says, that's my ego that talked for me. Rule number 3, school should provide a choice. What do I mean by choice? Let me give the example from Apelsin school. Probably Dima mentioned already. The choice starts with first grade in his school. Each first grader should identify whether they would go to chess or sewing lesson. And then the older they become, for a longer period of time they make the choice. Another example from Sweden. Kupskapskola. I trained myself 2 weeks to pronounce it properly. So this school started with an experiment in 1998. Teacher with the name of Safi, recognizing that kids had dropping motivation because kids are not deciding anything. They have no impact on the learning process. And then she said at least time management would be allowed for them every 15 minutes that they spend after the end of each class. This is something that they can then exchange as a unit of currency, and they would come at 7 in the morning, leave at noon, but they would deliver much more. The motivation increased, and Kupskapskola came into existence. And my final example here is this. Two radical examples of rule number 4. No knowledge should go not hand in hand with real life. The sexual awareness class in Denmark from grade 1, and only when I saw the curriculum I recognized why it's needed. Simple things shared with kids, like what's falling in love when you turn 13, how to accept changes in your body. Is it okay that I don't do what I've seen by accident in a porno movie? Where should I talk to and whom to talk to if in social networks a grown-up asks me to send my naked picture? Simple questions like this. And then I thought to myself, do I want my school to ignore the things that will impact my kid whether I like it or not? Another example. I was an eyewitness when at one of the classes they combined English, geography and labor class. And I've seen how the teacher asked the question. That was a 6-week topic, reasonable use of natural resources. And the teacher said, you just wiped your hands with paper towels. What it's made of? Timber, trees. How can we preserve those valuable natural resources? And then one smart boy says, probably we can cut the towel in two. What are other ideas? And a couple of voices later, they said, well, let's use linen towels or tie them in. That's what they did right afterwards. And this is elementary school. A beautiful example. Why do you need a new word? And in English they went through reuse and recycle. Unless you don't recognize what this new knowledge is all about. I have only 5 minutes left, so we'll move into Q&A session. But summing up, let me share my theory with you. We've been talking about the need to change modern school, and those who will achieve this, that would be kids themselves. Let me explain why. In Denmark, one teacher told me something I still remember, that the modern population of millennials, those who are 15 or less, they are the generation of kids who ask why. Previous were forced by authoritarian regime to do what they were forced to do. These guys need to first find arguments why they need to do it. My 18-year-old brother, the same methods were applied against him. That he was told, you'll become a janitor. He said, so what? And then mom said, a well-trusted tactics. You now have to recognize what you would become in 16 years of age. And he said, here's the story of 65-year-old realtor who came up with some smartphone device that made him rich as crazy. And then it effectively shut down mom. I can talk for ages. Let's move to Q&A session. Hello, thank you for such an intensive story. Did you study the role of parents and whether they can help the kid to choose the school? What are the mistakes and what are the good advice you can share with us? That's true. I talked with the parents a lot, and their influence, their impact on school process differs from country to country, but I like the metaphor I heard in Denmark that education is a triangle where you have parents, kids, and school, and you cannot take any one of those sides because the whole pyramid will be ruined. I love this metaphor, especially talking to parents who all ask the question, where is the portrait of the graduate, as if it's the oil paintings. Out of the examples I observed is where teachers are strongly supporting the choice of children. In Denmark, there was a person who was helping students to recognize what would be the future profession of the graduates. Now, the government made the choice, the responsibility of not only teachers but also parents and kids themselves, but those instructors that help you to recognize what is of interest to you personally. How much time do I have left? Well, I will disappoint you. 2 schools, even 3, impressed me. Appleseed School, not only because I love Dima Zitzer so much, but because he delivered on what he promised. Absolute freedom to kids. And teachers from all over Russia come to him trying to find out how come the Lord of Flies scenario does not work out there. But it's true, the kids people don't believe me that people enjoy absolute freedom. What if kids would say, Dima, leave? And I ask them, well, record a video audio on a day when they tell me this? They would never, ever tell it to me. Because if you have healthy relations with them, they will not want to dethrone you. Something that lots of people are afraid to do, and it impresses. Another school that impressed me, school number 42 in France, without teachers. A collaborative education system, a peer-to-peer learning process, which impressed me a lot. A teamwork skill, which I mentioned today, is of an absolute value there. Some of the students could be dropped out, but nobody knows who would be dropped out, but you need to help at least 3 other peers until the end of the day. And they come up with a beautiful test like welcome each one of the 1,000 students, or measure the square meters area of the canteen, for instance. And people save the nervous systems of one another. I visited them 3 years ago when it only started, and Pavel Durov and others visited them like crazy. Yeah, I support the idea we heard yesterday. As a journalist, I know, by being deputy chairperson, editor of Snob Projects, and we publish articles together with Dima frequently enough there, And I was surprised that it happens frequently in the school. We would come to anyone who needs help. There were some tragic events in Russia, shootings in, well, actually it was in Crimea, which is part of Ukrainian territory still. So we're never asking our students why it happened. But I was curious to learn, and I'm writing the second book, talking to first graders and to the high school graduates. What do they expect from a good school? And for the last 6 months, I collected so much valuable information that I can surprise principals of those schools where I interviewed kids. And one 7th grader girl asked me after an hour and a half of interviewing her, "How come you asked me this?" I said, "Why? Nobody asks us about this. They believe we are too young to have our own opinion." I said, "Well, because it's of interest to me. I will publish this book early next year. That would be a media book, which I can dedicate separate lecture to." An interesting question. How did I gain access to those schools? Lots of interesting jokes about this. But what's the value of this book for me? That I visited those schools which are difficult to access to, because you know that the ordinary municipal schools that are of no interest to others, it's difficult to access them. So I would visit them through immigrants. First I will share information about myself, then a parent of that pupil will come to school, lobby for me, they would vote, the parents would vote, and then they would vote with kids, not only parents. Sometimes it would take months, but I handle it properly, and I would come to the blackboard more frequently than I would do when I was a pupil myself. I would have to introduce myself, explain why I'm here, and then you learn which phrases would work, which didn't. And there was one phrase which always caused the glint of understanding in the eyes of the pupils. I always told them I studied the schools which I was unlucky not to have myself, which raises level of trust to you and to your teacher. We ran out of time.